Chris Yandeck, CYInterview covering Las Vegas and the world. This morning we have the reunion of two remarkable, dynamic, and charismatic men. In 2012, these two individuals, along with the late, great college football coach Mike Leach, participated in the coaching panel here on CYInterview. This is timely because we are well into March Madness. Today we welcome back first CYInterview sponsor, the founder of Epic Financial Strategies LLC, AAU Basketball League founder, and a man with ties to a family basketball dynasty, Mr. Rob Gill. Rob, thanks for joining us again on CYInterview today.
Pleasure to be here, Chris. Thank you.
You're welcome. And second, we welcome back a man who played for arguably the greatest college basketball coach in history. On the men's side, John Wooden. Andy Hill was part of 3 national championship teams at UCLA. Additionally, he is the former president of CBS Productions, where he made history for the first entire winning night of primetime television by a network. Andy, thank you so much for joining us back on CYInterview. Again, it's so great to see you.
Hey, great to be here, Chris. Shout out to Mike Leach. It was a pleasure and an honor to be able to spend time with him, if only on the air. And I want to take issue with one thing you just said. There's nothing to argue about. John Wooden is the greatest coach of all time.
I'm with you on that. There's no denying that. And thank you, Andy. And listen, grateful to have you here today, honestly. And, listen, I mean, you talk with Bill Walton every day still about Coach, I'm sure, just to begin before we get into everything. Every single day, you told me beforehand. I think that's incredibly interesting and phenomenal. Love Bill, love you, and thanks so much for being here. So let's just begin. How did basketball change both of your lives? Rob, I'll start. Andy, I'll start with you. How often do you think about the lessons that John Wooden has taught you?
Well, I think the interesting thing is when you say think about it, I'd say when it's top of mind, first of all, every day. But I think the real answer to that is sort of 24/7. I think in many ways the real power of being coached really well by a really great coach is that they really do become a part of your belief system, your organizing ideas, your values. And so, I think about them all the time. And by the way, I miss him. I think he was really reflective of so much that was good in the sport, and yes, there were people who were critical of him. But, the funny thing is the criticisms of Coach said more about the people criticizing him than they did about Coach. When you had people like Bob Knight saying, Coach thought he was better than everybody else. If you ever met John Wooden, you'd know that's a lie. He didn't think he was better than anybody. He thought he was a heck of a basketball coach, but, he thought it was just as important to be a really good, delivery truck driver as a really good basketball coach. And so, I think what he taught us about being humble, striving for greatness, being kind and generous to others are things that are lifetime lessons, not basketball lessons. And then also that idea of keep the pressure on, guys, keep pushing, keep going hard. Don't sit there and fret about the play that just didn't go right. Make it right. Get back in the action. And, I think those are things, Chris, that stick with you for a lifetime.
Rob, what was it like growing up around greatness with the Hurley family?
It's funny. Thanks for bringing that up. I want to make it clear. I never played at St. Anthony's for Coach Bob Hurley. However, his brother Timmy is married to my sister. And me being the youngest in my family and my sister being 11 years older than me, Kathy Gill Hurley, I was able to see behind the scenes what basketball greatness actually looked like. Because in my area, prior to the Hurley connection, it was just, people playing basketball in the parks and just your little ecosystem, which was in Bayonne. Now, Jersey City was where the Hurleys were from and 3 miles away. But when I started to see what they were doing on a daily basis, including Bobby Jr., who's my age, and Danny, who, Bobby coaches at Arizona State and Danny coaches at UConn and, was already won a national championship as a coach and Bobby as a player. I saw back then what was going on and what they did in order to get to where they are today. So that translated a lot into my business world. And I think the messaging from Bob Hurley has been incredible.
And we'll get into that in a minute. So let me ask you, Andy, speaking about, being the former president of CBS Productions, what are your thoughts on what CBS has made the NCAA tournament into today?
Well, I mean, first of all, I wouldn't just put this on CBS. I think that a lot of people went into what the NCAA tournament is today. They're now talking about expanding again, I guess. I mean, it's a money grab, Chris, and I wish more of it focused on the kids. Talk to anybody who's been to the Final Four. I've been a lot. It's a corporate event. They ship in 200 students and put them next to the court, but at the end of the day, the people next to the court are all there through a corporate tie-in. And so, to me, these sports ought to be about the kids, but when there's this much money involved, they seem to get left out of the equation. And I think that's sad, actually. But, I still love watching. As long as it's on, I'll always be hooked. The regionality of this, the fact that it spreads all across the country, in every region, small colleges, big colleges. It's so uniquely American. I remember going one year to the Final Four in Atlanta, where I was speaking, introducing Coach Wooden for an award he had won. And between games, and they're basically, this was the NCAA semis, there are 4 schools there. And so after the first game, all of the 2 schools that had been in that first game, sort of, they were going in opposite directions and almost ran into each other. And, you look at this in every other country in the world, in these highly charged sporting atmospheres, they have fences between these people. They don't let them interact. And it was lovely. I mean, it was like, great game, guys. Way to go. Great game. I love that about the NCAA tournament, that it has retained, I think, that marginal sense of innocence that, this is kids and they're playing hard. And, part of what I love about it that you'll never see in an NCAA game, I just saw it in the last game I watched, is when that clock is ticking down and there are a couple kids on that bench with a towel over their head because they're crying, because they know that the dream has ended. But that's what makes it so compelling, Chris, is that I was in Hollywood selling fake dreams, fake stories. This is reality. And that's why I think people love it so much, is the emotions, the high and the low, is so honest and so real, and the result of so much work, because Rob knows that what goes into these players now is such a bigger time requirement than when I was a youngster. I think it's actually out of control, personally. We can maybe talk about that too. But the number of hours these kids spend watching film. I never watched film at UCLA. We didn't do that. Can you imagine? We didn't do run-throughs. We had one practice a day. It was a different world. We didn't weight train. Think about that, Rob. No weight training.
Yeah.
No film. These kids are spending 2 to 3 times more hours by the time that journey is over. So it's great human drama, and I love watching it. But I feel like we're Thelma and Louise, and the cliff is not far away.
Rob, tell us about your AAU basketball league and your involvement today in trying to help young men who have basketball dreams and sports dreams and all those great things.
I will. I just have one quick question for Andy, because he talked about the corporate side of the Final Four. Andy, back when you guys were making your run, what was the Final Four like then? Because I think it kind of changed in the early '80s as far as like the fans.
Totally different, Rob. I have an old signed program that we signed on the bus going over to Cold Fieldhouse to beat Jacksonville in the NCAA finals in 1970.
Okay.
And they have a little blowout in the beginning of the program if you want to send away for tickets next year for the semis and the finals. $16 that includes the processing charge, which
Amazing.
I think was 50 cents.
Yeah.
So you tell me. I mean, this was, I'm not going to say it was quaint, but it was much smaller then.
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't tiny. We played one of the games, we played one of the years, my second year in the Astrodome.
Yes. Yes.
But that was where, that was part of the change, part of the evolution, part of where it started to become huge, to where now the finals are always played in a football stadium, which is a joke to me.
Yeah, it's
You
insane.
can't, half the people there can't see the game.
Yep.
You know, as I mentioned, that year I spoke for Coach at a Coca-Cola event, they gave me 2 tickets. I only needed 1, so I'm sitting up there and I introduced myself to the person next to me. It was Dean Smith's daughter. We couldn't see the game. We were watching on TV. It was in, a football stadium.
Craziness.
So
Crazy.
yeah, it's craziness. And
Yeah.
like I said, to not have the court surrounded by kids who've been cheering for this team all year long.
I
But,
agree. Yeah.
I must say, no offense, Rob, but a bunch of stockbrokers and insurance agents who, are on a trip,
Yep.
that some client's paying for.
Yep.
That really and that isn't CBS, Chris. That's there's so many people involved in these decisions, but ultimately, and by the way, another subject that I'm sure you've talked about on some of these shows, the gambling issue that has come into this, which is going to blow up. I mean, listen, Shohei Ohtani, Jonte Porter, we're just getting started. So let me tell you a story, and Rob, you'll jump in and interrupt me anytime you want.
Yeah.
But think about this in terms of today. I just mentioned we played the Astrodome. We beat Kansas in the semis. And with about a minute and a half left, because in the old days, the coaches used to put the subs in at the end. You notice the subs never get in unless it's 30 points now, but they used to put the subs in.
Facts.
And we beat Kansas. They had a big kid named Dave Robish, 6'10", left-handed kid. And, in the old days, they'd shoot these free throws. And, he was a Midwest farm boy, and he sweated like a pig. And so they inbound the ball to me. I wave everybody off and fall flat on my face. Guy picks the ball up and lays it in. Last 2 points of an NCAA semi. Now, by the way, in 1971, if you wanted to know the odds, you needed a bookmaker. You didn't know what the odds were. I didn't know what the odds were. Nobody knew what the odds were. But as we're running off the court, we're playing Villanova in 2 nights, right? But as we're running off the court, at the Astrodome, it's about a half a mile to the dugout. And the girls are jumping around and the kids are yelling and screaming. And every once in a while, Rob, there's a guy look kind of like you who is MFing me like you cannot believe.
He lost money.
He just lost money. I blew the spread.
Yeah.
Think if that happened today.
Yeah. Amazing.
I'd have police protection.
Yeah.
Because it looked like a flop.
Yep. But it wasn't. And you'd be under investigation.
Of course not.
Yes, understood. It's funny.
This gambling thing, greed is not good. Let me just say that as a statement. Greed is not good.
I agree.
And money is not the answer to everyone's problems and the royal road to happiness. And unfortunately, we seem to be speeding down that road. And this integration of gambling with all of the shows where the guys, bet $5, we'll give you $150. Who won't fall for that?
Yeah, and people don't want to work; they want to get money the easy way. So,
right.
So Chris was mentioning my AAU team, which is called Epic Elite AAU, and I started it because I have 2 sons. One is now a senior, one is now a junior. But I started it last year, and then the year before that, I did my own little AAU thing. And what I began to realize, and you know this very well, Andy, that there's 1.5 million high school basketball players in the country, of which 1,500 get a Division I scholarship. 30 of those in that class make it to the NBA. 24 go bankrupt after 10, 20, 30,000 hours of work. Right?
I'm sorry, Rob. Would you just repeat that?
Yeah.
Because that's mind-boggling.
Yep.
And maybe even a little slower.
Sure.
Because once you start to line it up like that, you just hold your head.
Yeah. So 1.5 million high school boys basketball players.
Right. Everyone wants to go play D1.
Yes.
1.5 million guys.
1,500 get a D1 scholarship. This is before the NIL, by the way. Which, by the way,
that number's gone down, I bet, to 1,000.
Significantly because of the NIL, because the proven commodity is the existing college player versus the senior in high school who now has to do a gap year. So prep schools and gap year schools are starting to skyrocket. But 1.5 million into 1,500 D1 scholarships, of which that class 30 make it to the NBA, of which of that 30, 24 go bankrupt. So when I started my AAU program, one of the things and you know this, Andy, proximity is power, and so is competition. Because to your point, there are kids that train 2 hours a day, but aren't playing enough games to go with that training. They may be able to do all the figure eight dribbling, two ball dribbling, but you put them in a game situation, they kind of, they fall back a little bit, and it takes them a while to catch up to the speed of the game when the competition is at the highest level, especially for the kids that continue. Now, you got to work on your game skill-wise off the court, but for the ones that are tripling down off the court, not getting a lot of on-the-court time, there becomes a little bit of a delay, a snag. So,
and Rob, Rob, at some point here, you can explain to me how dribbling with two balls makes sense.
yes.
Every contemporary basketball coach I know makes his players spend hours dribbling with two balls.
Yeah.
Why? When you say why, everybody else does it.
Yeah.
But what I know is when you dribble with two balls,
yep.
when you dribble, your offhand has a job. It's not to dribble a basketball. It's to keep the other guy away.
Absolutely.
But every coach I see out there does. It's an AAU invention. Two ball dribble.
That's a great point, because if you think about it, if you're used to dribbling two balls a lot, you can get stripped because you're not used to protecting it with your guard hand. That's an excellent point.
Exactly.
And I don't know any proof of science that two balls, other than coordination, would be what
I've asked a number of coaches.
Yeah.
Do you have data that can show me why this works?
And no one,
because we have so many analytics.
Yep.
No, we don't have data. Everybody does it, so we do it.
Yeah, and for me in my life, it's been happening since I was a little kid. So,
right.
You know what I mean? So it's always present. With that though, what we've created is a blue collar mindset to our basketball, including financial literacy. Because Andy, think of all the entrepreneurs and don't, or you've heard of. One of the things that entrepreneurs are great at is rinse and repeat every day. One of the great things about basketball players, football, and any sport athlete that's into it is rinse and repeat every day. The challenge is with these basketball, I'm only going to speak on basketball. Once the game is done, they don't know how to translate that into business and entrepreneurship. So what we've created is a financial literacy course tied to being an entrepreneur, tied to branding themselves properly through social media, not necessarily a dunk or, but other things that are connected to who they are at the core, and show them how to brand themselves, including how to communicate with integrity and, most importantly, influence on when they talk to. So if there's 10 versions of me and I'm a senior point guard, I want to make sure that I separate myself from the other 9 that can do exactly what I do, except how I communicate my message. So that's what we're
starting to build out. This is fantastic stuff you're doing, Rob. This is really great.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And so this year we're on the UA Circuit Rise, which means it's Steph Curry's Under Armour AAU. We're not on the circuit yet. This is like the step into being on the circuit. But we got here after 1 year, which is pretty fast. We didn't expect to get here this fast. And that means we play in 3 live tournaments a year in front of 60 Division I coaches, plus Division II, plus Division III. So the kids have proximity and they have access. But now, to both of our points, the NIL is now teaching the senior in high school that scholarship that was, like, I know a guy that coaches an elite basketball team here in New Jersey. He has 6 kids that made it to the NBA. He's one of my advisors at Epic Elite. He just has a kid that got a scholarship to LaSalle. And when he was talking to LaSalle, they have 3 more offers, and they're not giving them to any high school kids. They're only for college portal kids. That's 3. Think of all the D1 schools that do that. Multiply that number, and you can see what's actually happening.
So that 1,500 figure that you quoted, and I said was maybe 1,000.
Yep.
Maybe even less than that.
Yep. Is less.
That's a story, by the way, a story no one's talking about.
Yeah, I know. And the gap year is becoming more. To your point, this training creates injuries earlier, and this gap year is now becoming an important thing as well, and a money grab too, by the way.
Andy, I want to get into it. You were talking about money a couple minutes ago. Rob has a very interesting book coming out called Surviving Success. Rob, I would love if you would tell Andy about your upcoming book.
Yeah, Surviving Success, Andy, is my personal journey. The stories told through the way I was brought up, including, I was addicted to alcohol and as well as drugs. I got sober. I'm 53. I got sober when I was 26 years old. Being young and seeing success outside of my my ecosystem, whether it was the Hurleys or other people. Once I got sober, I incorporated that into my business, and I began to achieve a level of financial success that I didn't think was possible. However, I had a lot of what we call wealth wounds, wounds that existed from my earlier years that was passed down to me. And as I made money, I felt like on some deep level, I didn't deserve it. So I did everything I can to give it back. And I don't mean in a good way, but in a way where self-destructive behavior while staying sober, by the way. So as I climbed the mountain of financial success, each new level up, think of it in sports or anything else, there was beautiful new challenges that as I was stepping into them, I looked at as negatives, not realizing now that those are the greatest gifts. And the book is about how I was able to survive success, not because of Rob Gill, but because he had great teachers, coaches, trainers, mentors, and partners that helped him see what he couldn't see. So the book's coming out in about another week or two.
Fantastic.
And as you know, Andy, you've worked with a lot of great companies and things like that. Rob has a Money Madness webinar coming up. Talk about your upcoming webinar on April 4th, Rob.
Yeah, I'm having fun with it, Andy. It's a virtual live webinar. I'll be out in Phoenix actually next week. I'm not going to go to the Final Four. At least I may decide in the last minute I will. But I have a April 4th live webinar where we're going to talk about not only tax write-offs, but tax strategies when it comes to business owners and executives and entrepreneurs. And, you know, the webinars are about 60 minutes, and I do about 4 of them a year. This is by far and away the biggest I've ever had. I already have over 2,000 people that have registered. Usually I'd get 500 or 600. So we're excited about it. And I'll be doing that on April 4th, 5 o'clock next time.
Think of me on April 4th. It's my 50th wedding anniversary.
Wow. I will. Absolutely. Congratulations. Yes.
Congratulations, sir, to you and yours.
Thank you.
So let me just close. I've got one for Andy, and then I've got one for both of you. Rob, I think you'll like this. Andy, what would Coach Wooden say about building your own business and, you know, finding your own way the way that Rob has?
Well, I think he would say find something that you can completely commit to. Be great at it and work at getting better at it every day. Realize that there are going to be wins and losses. And the toughest piece, and now I'm going to give you the secret to being a successful entrepreneur, because I've always said that Coach's ideas are simple, but we all got that Betty Crocker thing in our head. And when we hear simple, we think easy, and this is simple and really hard. You're in the sales business, and I don't care what business you're in the sales business. Right, Rob?
Yes.
Everybody's selling.
Influence.
Everybody's selling every day.
Absolutely.
And so here's the key to being a great salesperson. And I say this based on talking to a lot of people in sales. And I would always find that they were the heaviest drinking people I ever met. Because if you are results oriented, and by the way, we're all taught that absolutely I'm results oriented. That's what I want to be. I'm bottom line results oriented. If you're results oriented, here's what happens. You go out to sell, and you go out to sell with passion and enthusiasm and excitement. And guess what they say most of the time when you sell? No. Everybody who sells knows that no is what you hear most of the time. And so unless you're a masochist, this is a true story, guys. I did a big event one year in San Francisco, and I said, I hope is anybody in the room a masochist? And a whole table at the back raised their hand. But unless you're a masochist, here's what happens. You anticipate the no. And so what you do is you heard Rob go through 1.5 million, 1,500, 30, 24, right? Boy, bang, he can nail those like anybody. But where you sell is from your heart. And when you're results oriented, you can't expose yourself like that all the time. So you take that and you turn it down just a little bit. What would Coach Wooden tell you? No. When you finish your presentation, how'd I do? Did I do great? Was I prepared? Was I passionate? Was I organized? And by the way, the reason that this works, Chris and Rob, and I'll ask you both this, is anybody harder on you than you?
Yourself.
And the answer is no.
No.
So be your judge. Did I go in and hit it out of the park? And if I did, great. He said, no, let's go on to the next one. I can't wait. I'm not sitting there devastated. And by the way, was I great at this? No, I wasn't. My feelings got involved too much. But this is pure John Wood. Invest in the process. And the other piece of this is essential, and you'll understand this, is if I didn't do great, but I'm not tied to the devastation of the no, I have a much better chance of analyzing what do I need to do to be better. You know, John Wooden used to spend an hour every day planning practice for that day. What do we need to work on? What do we need to get better on? Yet most people in business find any discussion about that to be dreadfully uncomfortable. And so they don't have them until they're really upset, and then they accomplish nothing. Get better every day. Make each day your masterpiece. Don't give up, and be the best in the business. You'll be a big success.
Yeah. Thank you for your inspiring words today, Andy. So I'm going to close with you. I got one for each of you. We're in March Madness now. Andy and Rob, you were both affected by legendary basketball coaches, families. Tell us about them and how they impacted you. Andy, you go first.
Well, I mean, John wouldn't change my life. And, you know, it's hard for me to imagine today if there'd been a transfer portal, there would have been a lot of schools saying, hey, come here, we'll give you NIL money, let's leave. Thank goodness I stayed and suffered through 3 years on the bench that taught me humility, that taught me teamwork, that taught me to stick with it. And that once I got into a business that was really tough, show business. But most of them are, to be honest, they're tough. You know what I knew? I'm tough too. You're not going to beat me down. I can take it. And I took what I learned at UCLA and turned it into shows that will run on television forever.
Amazing.
And so I'm really proud of that. There's shows that my kids could watch, you could watch with your family, that had positive things to contribute to the world. Because what we all want to do is just leave it a little better than we found it. And hopefully, I know Coach did, and I hope he'll be proud of me when I'm finished too.
Andy, I'll just jump in quickly. I'm going to ask Rob these two too. But is the role of coaching underappreciated in the tournament?
No, I don't think so. I think actually I think it's overappreciated in the tournament.
Gotcha.
You know, I think because the truth of it is, you go back to that CBS question. The end of the day, they've had to turn the coaches into the stars because they're the only ones who come back.
Gotcha.
Rob, I know who the coaches are. I don't know the players.
Makes sense. Rob, how did the Hurley family impact you, and is coaching underappreciated in the tournament?
Well, let me go back to the Hurleys first. So when I think of their trajectory, their success, and, you know, when I came on the scene, let's say in 1981, they were, you know, St. Anthony's, it's the greatest high school basketball program in history by the greatest high school basketball coach ever, hands down, bar none. I'll argue that with anybody. And what he had created there was unbelievable. 300-person school, would raise money on his own to keep the school going. Like, the passion he had for basketball, his X and O's as a coach was probably at that level second to none. Players there, you know, it was a team first. Always St. Anthony's was the higher power, not the player, including when both of his sons played there. Great at defense, and when I say that, when I think of business, defense is the first thing. Like, when I think of financial planning, defense is the first thing. And the tenacious defense that was witnessed year in and year out based on what he would bring forth was incredible. And his message, his action was always louder than his words, and his words were powerful, to be clear. So when I had all that at my fingertips at a young age, I didn't even know what it was. So I was just like a bystander just watching this in awe. But when I did get sober later on in my life, I went back to the moments that I saw certain things, and I was able, not like Andy, I didn't spend 3 years on it. I didn't have that level of coaching proximity daily, but I went to a lot of the open gyms at one point in high school, and I saw things that were just life-changing, period, end of story. So then when you look at his two sons, he also has a daughter whose kids are very good in sports themselves. But when I look at Danny and Bobby, Bobby in college goes to Duke, gets 2 national championships, Andy, as you're aware. And, you know, he was a MOP of one of the Final Fours, 2-time All-American, lottery pick. And you think of proximity, you think of what it means to really be able to play against the best because you're going to elevate, your standard goes higher. So all these things have always been registered in my head. And listen, when we're 21 years old and Bobby Jr. gets a contract with the NBA and his own sneaker deal, that was a big deal for us here in the Bayonne, Jersey City area. That was like unbelievable. He was in commercials, blah, blah, blah. The whole thing. Gets into a car accident, right? Danny Hurley, at this point, right before the accident, is at Seton Hall and is very good basketball player, going through struggles and actually leaves the team a week before Bobby's accident. Got some attention on it, but then, of the two, Bobby always had more attention. Older brother, it just was what it was. And then all of a sudden, like, Bobby gets into the accident, and he had 8 years of unbelievable success. 4 years at St. Anthony's, 4 years at Duke. Rookie season, within the first month or two, gets into a bad accident. We all know the story. Then the story of Danny Hurley begins, right? Danny Hurley starts as an assistant at Rutgers, I believe. Then he coached St. Benedict's here. Then he gets the job at the school in Staten Island, goes on to Rhode Island, goes on to UConn, and helps Bobby along the way as Bobby then makes his move to Buffalo, makes his move to Arizona State. Wagner was the college in Staten Island. And you think of their journeys, right? And in the middle of this, I'm not connected to that journey other than a witness, but they always were my benchmark in things I did in business, and to me continues to elevate. And once I stepped into the basketball world of AAU, it brought me back to serving and contributing, just like when I got sober in AA. It brought me back to serving and contributing, just like when I went to the Ukraine for 7 days. It brought me back to serving and contributing. And when I'm giving instead of getting, when I'm listening instead of talking, the world is a much better place for me. When I'm talking more than listening, when I'm taking more than when I'm giving, the world is much more choppier for me. So I think those are all the lessons that I would say. As far as March Madness and coaching, listen, I'm going to just speak on Danny Hurley because I know who his dad is, and I know the journey he took to where he got to where he is right now. And he's a tremendous coach, and I think it's bearing out as we speak.
Defending national champions, Rob. Andy, go ahead in closing.
Let me give you one John Wooden quote that it isn't a John Wooden, but it's from the book where he really learned everything about life. It's called, what is the name of this thing? The Majesty of Calmness by William George Jordan. Costs $5 and it's genius. Go buy it. It'll take you an hour to read.
Wow.
The royal road to happiness is not paved with the hunger to get. It's paved with the hunger to give.
Love that.
Rob found that out, and he's in finance and he's in the money business. When someone in the money business tells you that, listen to them.
Yeah.
Because that's a real key to life. Yes, it's better to live life with money, but money is not life. It's about helping. It's about giving.
That's right.
And the truth of it is your happiness will come from the appreciation of those who get where they want to go. Coach enabled us, lifted us. That's where his joy came from, not from the notoriety that it gave him, but what he saw giving it. And I'm sure this is how Rob feels about his clients when he sees them go out and buy their first house, and he sees them retire and knows that they have enough money. That's where the joy is, not the paycheck, and it never is.
Yeah.
Thank you both for being on CYInterview today. Andy Hill, former, of course, 3-time national champion at UCLA under Coach John Wooden, and of course, Rob Gill, AAU Basketball League Financial Services Company. Surviving Success is coming out, and on April 4th, a webinar. Thank you both for being on CYInterview today. Thank you for coming back after 12 years together. And the only thing missing from this conversation, of course, is the great Mike Leach. May he rest in peace. And one thing that Mike always said, of course, was, and the thing that I always remember is, can I change it? Can I live with it? That was his motto, and I appreciate that you guys are here today. And Andy, we're going to have you back, and Rob, we're going to have you back, guys, together to do another one. This was great. And Andy, thanks so much, as always, for sharing so many words from Coach Wooden in your life, as always. I always enjoy hearing it.
Great pleasure, Chris. Let's not wait 12 years. I'm not sure I got him.
I understand that. Thank you both for being on CYInterview today. Hang on with me. Thank you for watching today's CYInterview segment from Las Vegas. Please hit the like button and please hit the subscribe button to be updated on all future CYInterview content from Las Vegas and beyond.